Hi, Professor Dyer here, talking about research in human development and family science. So, interviews and questionnaires are great, we use them a lot. How do scientists, however, get self report from, let's say, children who might not have the cognitive or language skills to be very good self reporters? And also, how do scientists get self report that's meaningful when the topic they're studying is very subject to either recall bias or social desirability or both? Today, let's talk about the use of self report tasks. The first self report task to talk about is the use of a daily diary. This is simply asking a subject to keep track of something in real time as it's happening, rather than to report on it later. So the subject might be given a diary for 5 days, let's say, to keep track of what they eat or to keep track of how much they sleep, things that they might not be able to report collectively at the end of the week. As a contrast, here's a questionnaire that is widely used to get information about diet. It's called Rate Your Plate, and you can see types of foods are listed along the left: grains, whole grains, fruits and vegetables, dairy products, and the subject is asked to report for each food item how much they usually eat. And I hope you see that this is going to be problematic. It's going to be problematic because people don't necessarily remember what they have eaten every day, and these estimates of usually, that's kind of ambiguous. This is subject, therefore, to both recall bias and social desirability. In contrast, a food diary would look something like this. For each day, you simply write down what time it is and what you ate and how much of it you ate. And you do that for however many days the scientist wants to keep track. This is going to help with problems of memory, and it should also reduce some social desirability. The experience sampling method is a form of daily diary where the scientist has an app, essentially, that the subject would install on their smartphone, and they would get pulsed at either certain times of the day or at random times of the day in order to report something about what is going on right there at that moment of the day. The experience sampling method is often used to study mood, because mood is something that changes, potentially anyway, changes during the day, and we might want to know about your mood at multiple points of the day, and so you just get a little buzz on your phone, and you can tell the app how you're feeling right then and there, or maybe who you're with. Another kind of self-report task is a demonstration task. This is widely used with small children. You want to know something about the way they think, but it's hard for them to do that in the abstract. And so you show them some demonstration and ask them what they think about it. Some very well-known demonstration tasks are Piaget's conservation tasks. Here's a conservation of number. You might have done this with small children, where you'll take a treat and you'll lay them out on the table, and then you'll spread them out, and can they figure out that there's the same number in both rows, right? So that's a conservation of number task. You demonstrate this to them and ask them what they think. And the most important part of that process is asking them why they think whatever the answer it is that they just gave you. So they're still self-reporting, but you're essentially using a little prop. Another kind of self-report task is story completion. This is also done often with young children, where we present them with a stem of a story that is designed to elicit some kind of issue, and then ask them how they think the story might end. And very often what they do is almost inadvertently tell you something about themselves. So for instance, the attachment story completion task has 4 story stems. One of them goes something like this: the child and the caregiver, and you'd name the mom, the dad, the grandma, the babysitter, whoever. They're playing in the park, and the child runs and trips on a rock, and oh no, he skinned his knee. And then you ask the child, what happens next? A child who has a secure attachment to that caregiver in their own life will probably tell a story that reflects the expression of their feelings, acknowledgement of those feelings from the caregiver, comfort offered by the caregiver, and then a return to normal. They'd say, the child fell, mom came over, said, "What's wrong?" The child cried, the mom put a Band-Aid on the owie and gave the baby a hug, gave the child a hug, and then they got up and continued playing in the park. And that would convey a secure attachment. They've inadvertently told you something about their own life, thinking that they were just telling a generic story. Similar, but not quite the same, are vignettes. Rather than presenting just a story stem and asking the child to complete the story, a vignette is a little scenario that's presented, and vignettes are used more often with adults, actually. There's a scenario that is presented, and then the subject is asked for their opinion about what they just heard. What do you think about what that person said or did? What do you think that person should do next? Why do you think the person in your story did or said such and such? One that is used in child custody evaluations is the Plotkin child vignettes. There are 18 vignettes describing a child's misbehavior. So 2 of them, for example, your infant is not good at holding on to objects yet. You give her a bottle and it slips out of her hands and breaks on the rug. A second vignette from the Plotkin instrument: shortly after you punish your 5-year-old, you tell him to play quietly with his toys. Very soon after this instruction, he stands up, looks you in the eye, throws a toy at an expensive lamp, breaks it, and laughs. For each vignette, the respondent is asked, how likely is the child doing this to annoy you, and how likely are you to punish them for this? And what we know is that negative attributions and punishments are consistently more likely among abusive parents. So when parents, let's say, have lost custody of a child and are seeking to get it back, the Plotkin child vignettes can be used to assess to what degree they present a risk to further abuse their child in the future. Self-report tasks, in sum, allow us insights into subjective reality that would otherwise be hard to get, either because of the language or cognitive skills of the subject, or because the topic is so very, very sensitive and subject to social desirability or recall bias. They can help to minimize some of those problems with interviews and questionnaires. Still, keep in mind, this is self-report, so self-report tasks are best for measuring subjective reality, because recall bias and social desirability, even if we mitigate them, they don't go away.